the corporate ladder share their stories with us. Jennifer will be dropping their LinkedIn profiles in the chat for you to learn more and to actually get a visual of Shawnee, our moderator, and learn more about their backgrounds and be able to connect if you choose. So allow me to make some introductions. First, today we have our panel moderator, again, the one who we can't see right now, otherwise I would have her wave, but her name is Shawnee Gist. She's a Senior Vice President, Manager of DEI and Culture and Engagement at Atlantic Union Bank. Our panelists today, we have three of them. Shannon Drage, if you could wave, is Senior Vice President, Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, and Interim Director of Investor Relations at Zions Bancorp. Beth Shivak, raise your hand. Hello. Senior Vice President, Head of Corporate Communications at Atlantic Union Bank. And finally, Stephanie Spencer, Senior Vice President and Treasury Management Receivables Product Leader at Huntington Bank. I feel like I just announced contestants for Miss America. Thank you to our moderator and our panelists for joining us today. We are so honored to have you. So now I'll pass this over to Shawnee.
Thank you, Jen, and hello, everyone. I am so sorry that I am not able to see you on camera. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to locate your reactions and start engaging with the audience since I can't see you and give you my genuine smile. But thank you for joining the Leading Women in Banking today as we hear industry experts share their secrets to their success in their careers. Again, my name is Shawnee Gist, and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator today. Beth, Shannon, and Stephanie, welcome to the boardroom on this transformative Tuesday. I'm sure our audience is anticipating what they can glean from your insights. So let's get started. Are you all ready to share?
We're ready.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So we've heard a little bit about you doing our intros this morning from Jen, so thank you. But leadership style is often transient to success. Shannon, let's start with you and share with our audience how you lead others and how you would describe your leadership style.
Thank you, Shania. So I will just say right up front, I did not set out in my career to become a leader. I fell into it sort of over time and not with a lot of intent, at least in the beginning. I started my banking career at Umpqua Bank in Oregon as an accounts payable specialist. I was really just looking for an industry and a company that I could really believe in and, have a lot of opportunity to grow, but never viewed myself as a leader. I'm a natural introvert, and I really just wanted to contribute and be part of a team. But over time, I found my passion for the work and for helping my team do the best that they could do kind of propelled me into more and more positions of responsibility and accountability. And then I met women and leaders along the way who taught me to rethink how I was viewing leadership. I had really always viewed it as this power over people, which is not how I ever viewed myself. I didn't feel the need to control others or to mandate how the work got done. I really was a lot more collaborative in how I thought about things. But there were women along the way who taught me that influence is not the same thing as having power over. Having power to influence things is much different. And that resonated with me deeply and really changed how I thought about leadership, how I thought about myself, how I thought about the difference that I could have in my workplace and in my life more generally. And so over time, I really thought about how I could use my skills and my talents to help others reach their full potential. I had kind of a knack for seeing what other people were really good at doing and finding a way to leverage that and to create these really high performing teams. And so those are the things that really drive me. Those are the reasons why I seek out positions of leadership, and really what motivates me at the end of the day is seeing other people build on their dreams and achieve the things that they really want to do in life. It's very exciting, it's very fulfilling, and it's what I love.
Wonderful, Shannon. Thank you. That's some great insight that you shared. Beth, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would like to add to what Shannon shared with us and share with our audience what your leadership style is. How would you describe that?
Sure, Shawnee. And I miss seeing your beautiful face. All right. So my leadership style, I'll describe myself as the person, throughout my life, I'm the person, if we're doing a group exercise and if someone says, all right, who wants to lead the group? And there's silence. I'm sitting there like, okay, Beth, don't raise your hand, don't raise your hand, don't raise your hand. And then no one will do it. I'm like, okay, I'll do it, right? I am always that person that is, when there's the awkward silence, I'm always jumping in there to go ahead and, lead the group, take charge, want to bring the group together to make things happen. I always give other people the option, but if no one else is going to do it, I am right there to take that place. So I have not always been in the banking industry. I've been at Atlantic Union Bank for 5 years. Prior to that, I was the head of corporate communications for Joanne Fabric. So if you guys are familiar with arts, crafts, all that, creativity. And before that, I was with retail real estate. So, shopping centers, right? How fun was that? So being in corporate communications, my skills are transferable to any different industry. So I think that's one really cool part of my job, that I can kind of work with any industry. And now with banking, I think the cool part is storytelling. We are part of everyone's lives every single day at the biggest moments of their lives. So I think that is really, really cool. Switching to my leadership style, I'm going to go down in a little bit different direction. My mindset, when I think of leadership, is one team, right? So, we lead a bunch of people, we manage a bunch of people, but I look at anytime we work on something, we are one team, and I like to be very collaborative. Now, there are pros to that. Of course, everyone thinks about being collaborative is very, very good and positive, but there's actually some cons to that people don't always think about, and I'll get to that in a second. So, many of the areas that I represent go hand in hand. So, if you think about employee communications, public relations, social media, they all are intertwined. So instead of having each group work in a silo, I bring them all together. Like, let's sit down, let's brainstorm. We're working on this campaign. What are we going to do? What are some ideas? I love that approach because people that are in different areas, they get to contribute to other areas. So maybe they're not in PR, but they can learn about it and they can contribute even if that's not their main job. So I use that approach a lot. And that way everybody feels involved. Everybody knows what is going on because there's so much overlap. I will say the one con is that you do take on workload and time that isn't your own, right? So there is a con to that. So if people aren't team oriented, if they don't like that kind of collaborative environment, then they most likely aren't going to like my style.
Thank you, Beth. Very well said. I can speak to your collaboration and commitment to that with your leadership style. So thanks for sharing with our audience. Stephanie, why don't you round out this question for us and share with us what you describe your leadership style as?
Yeah, that sounds great. And I love Beth's energy. So it sounds like she would be someone super fun to collaborate with. So when I kind of look back, through my journey into leadership, I was managing a portfolio of merchant relationships when I had a boss at the time he came to me and said, you know what? Have you ever thought about leading people? And similar to Shannon, I was kind of like, I don't know. But hey, I'll give it a try. So I was given an opportunity to lead a very small team and continue doing that portfolio work, what I was very comfortable with when it comes to I worked for First Data at the time. So credit card processing, merchant services. If you're looking at my resume, you'll see that's my deep end, my subject matter expertise. But so I was given that opportunity to kind of get my feet wet to see how I adapted, how I adjusted. And the reality is, I think, my mission in life is I really enjoy helping others, helping people. And by entering a leadership role that really allows me to help people day to day grow and, reach their personal goals as well as their professional goals. So, I look at it today as an honor to lead a team of product managers at Huntington Bank. So that way we're driving together to deliver a best in class experience from a product perspective for our customers and our colleagues.
Thank you so much. That is wonderful, Stephanie, and so much insight there. Let's shift a little bit and go back to Beth. Beth, we heard from you as you shared your collaborative approach with your leadership style. In that light, what do you prescribe as the most critical characteristic of today's effective leaders?
So with COVID, the world has changed. The world is upside down. So I would say one of the most important characteristics is empathy, not flexibility, but empathy, right? Our jobs are no longer the standard 8:30 to 5:30. Our personal lives and our work lives have intertwined. And so as leaders, we have to realize that we hired the whole person. It's just not that person that showed up at work that day, right? Life is hard. We all have things that are going on outside of work, the hard things, but also the really good things too. So, we have to understand that whole dynamic. And there is nothing wrong with someone taking the morning meeting at home, little Johnny, seeing him off to school, coming into the office, 10 o'clock, or, leaving a little early to go to the swim meet. Or, it doesn't even have to be about kids. I don't have kids, but, there are special moments in life that we don't want to miss either. So don't let the job interfere with people's special moments in life. If you're able to do that, you're going to have, a happier workforce, a more engaged workforce, and you're going to have people that want to be a team and that want to work well together. So I think it all comes down to empathy more than flexibility.
Thank you, Beth. That's so true and really timely right now in our industry. Shannon, Stephanie, I'd love to hear you add what you think your critical characteristics of today's effective leaders are.
Well, I would just add on to what Beth said, because I think she's absolutely right. And what I think ends up being the results of incorporating an empathetic style is that you build these really deep and authentic relationships with the people that you work with, whether they're your colleagues, your peers, whether they're the people who report to you, or whether they're your superiors. Having those trusted relationships where you know that you can tell that person the truth, right? The unvarnished truth about how things are going, what challenges you're facing. Having that ability leads to much better outcomes across the board, whether it's in your own personal development and your career path, or whether it's in the results of the company, because you have people that you can trust, that you can go to and say, hey, we have a problem and we're going to fix it together. I think it's so, so critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think Beth and Shannon have both made excellent points that I completely agree with. The only thing that I would probably, the couple points that I would add on to, in today's the pace of play is moving so fast and it's only getting faster. So I like to empower my colleagues to, empower them and encourage them to make bold changes and to make big, bold decisions. And it's okay if we fail, as long as we fail fast and we pivot on to the next thing to become successful. So I think characteristics of successful leaders today are they're agile, they're honest, and they encourage bold change and bold decision and create that environment where colleagues do feel, it's okay if I make a mistake and then we'll move on to the next thing to make it better.
That's amazing, Stephanie. Let's lean into that and go into our next question with exactly what you said. We've talked quite a bit about what success looks like, but sometimes we learn from our mistakes and later extract the best practices we should have done right the first time. So share with our audience what you believe is the most dangerous trait in a leader's career.
For me personally, and I have experienced it one time with a previous leader, and I won't name drop because that wouldn't be cool, but I found like it was really hard to lean into the team when the leader wasn't being transparent with the overall mission or potential strategy. So you really, for me, I need to know like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose within the role? What do you want my team to do? And really, those road mapping exercises and those strategic activities, I think unless we're being like truly vocal with the teams of what we're working towards and what that common goal is, I think sometimes the role gets a little bit lost in translation if you don't fully have a understanding of what we're working to. So I would say not being transparent, and just not asking for help, holding things too close to the vest. Because as I said before, like the pace of play around here is picking up, and that's not just at Huntington Bank, that's at all of your organizations, right? So those would be the things that come to my mind when it comes to some of the more negative characteristics that I've ran into.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's wonderful. Shannon, Beth, we'd love to hear from you. What do you feel like are the most dangerous traits in a leader's career?
I'm happy to jump in here. It's something, again, I've also experienced a couple of times in a pretty personal way. And it's something I think of as like the zero-sum mentality, this notion that in order to succeed, other people need to fail or look bad to help you look better. And for me, I've encountered that sort of in transition periods when I've been coming into a role while others are exiting the role, and witnessed it sort of as this, they didn't really want to help with a transition, right? They weren't interested in helping that be a smooth transition, weren't interested in helping me kind of learn the ropes of this new role. And what I found as I sort of unraveled all of that and talked to peers who had worked with these leaders in the past is that it was so much more damaging than just making my transition hard. There was a whole, attitude around these people of like, they do not want to engage. They're not collaborative. They're not helpful. They don't listen. And it really hindered the ability of their teams to accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish. To Stephanie's point, to really make big, bold changes. If you're trying to engage with somebody who thinks that they are the only people who can have good ideas, that's not a great environment to be in. And I think it really holds back an entire organization when you have people like that.
Thank you, Shannon. Beth, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little bit of jumping off what Stephanie said. People that have the knowledge have the power, right? And you can either use that good or bad. And I think a leader with bad character traits use that power for bad. They will withhold information as a way to lift themselves up. A lot of the times it is lifting themselves up rather than the team. And that comes from, a lot of times that comes from just being not secure with themselves, not secure with their position. We've all heard it, imposter syndrome before. So there could be a lot of things that are going on with that leader within themselves that could be making them not a great leader. They could be just starting out as a leader, right? Like we were all saying, we were all once young leaders, and I remember I came into a leadership position very young in my career. I think I was 22 years old, and at one time I was the youngest director of marketing in the entire country. And I mean, I was basically out of college. Do you think I knew what I was doing? No. Or lead a team? I'm sure I made some mistakes at the time, but there's also thinking about what that person is going through and what's making them maybe have some of those characteristic flaws. But now I'm just rambling at this point. So I'll wrap it up. Is the knowledge is power, and they keep that power to themselves and don't share it.
Thank you, Beth. Shannon, let's start with you and pivot a little bit on how we support leaders. What do you feel are the best ways that leaders can support other leaders?
So I think I'll answer this by just talking about what has been so impactful in my own career, and that is having, colleagues and mentors and leaders who not just once, but several times reminded me of my own potential and reminded me not to limit myself. Many of my, first leadership positions, like Stephanie, were not my idea. I didn't raise my hand and say, hey, I want to lead this. I was tapped on the shoulder, and I know at the time I probably had some hesitations and was, very supported along the way by people who believed in me. And so I think about that a lot now as, my positions change, my scope of influence is different than it used to be. And I look around at the people on my team or adjacent to me, and I see these folks who have so much potential, who may be limiting themselves, not even intentionally, right? They're just not thinking about all the ways that they could lead in the organization. And I really feel very strongly about finding ways to support them, to remind them to raise their hand, to tell them that they can do this, that I know they can do it, because that just made such a huge difference in my life.
That's really important. That nurturing is so very important to develop leadership. Beth, Stephanie, did you want to add any other insights that Shannon and kind of piggyback off of her insight there?
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit on this one, just because, like Shannon, I'm very appreciative of the opportunities that I've had. I've had the opportunity to have some really great leaders, and those leaders who have, given me the opportunity to lead, the leaders who have promoted me along the way throughout my career journey, they all took chances on me, which I am very, very appreciative of. I've had a really fun ride, since I've been in the workforce since 2001. And I am where I am today because people took chances on me. So I would say to newer leaders or people who are getting into the game of leadership is that, don't be afraid to take chances on people. Like if you have that hunch that they've got some of those characteristics and qualities that you're looking for to add to your team, I would just encourage them to, take that chance on maybe somebody outside of your industry, or that person that's hungry, that's looking for that opportunity. I would just encourage take a chance on them, because it could be a great opportunity, not only for the leader who's bringing them in, but for that new colleague that's joining the team. I let diamond in a rough.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Beth, is there anything you'd like to add to the toolkit that Stephanie and Shannon have built around what that nurturing looks like?
Yeah, sure. As they were talking, I was thinking about how to support other leaders, but it's also good to let other people know how they can support you. So Shawnee, I might be going something and I'm working on this big project. I can go to you, hey, Shawnee, I'm working on this. I need some support. Can you check in on me every once in a while? And, we can develop that relationship, and, it's okay to ask for that support too. So don't be afraid to do that. And same thing with, asking for what you want. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. You don't have to wait to be asked for that next step. Though it's always very, very it's a huge compliment to be asked to lead a project or asked to step forward as a leader. You can make yourself known that you want the next opportunity, that you're ready for the next opportunity, and that you can ask for a challenge or to take on next responsibilities too.
Thanks, Beth. Now comes the good stuff. Every leader needs to grow, right? Every leader needs some resources that they can use. Beth, what resources such as books, podcasts, and the like do you use to maintain your leadership development and growth?
So I'm one of those people too that, I shouldn't say this, but it's like the first thing I do when I wake up is check my email. The last thing I do before I go to bed is check my email. And that is something that I am personally working on, right? I know I need that balance in my life. So I am a big fan of podcasts. I listen to podcasts, I listen to audiobooks. My favorite non-work related podcast is Morbid. It's about true crime. I don't know how you can make true crime hilarious, but they do. This podcast is. So if you guys like true crime, check out Morbid. but my favorite work podcast is I listen to things about my industry. So the one about PR and communications, it's called Spin Sucks. And they're just 10-minute segments. And I listen to them on my way to work. I got a very short commute. I'm very lucky. And I listen to them just to stay current on the industry. Can you imagine if I didn't know about Chat GPT, back in the day, and someone was, came up to me and asked, and I was like, what are you talking about? Right? I have to be ahead of those trends before they come, and how are they impacting what we're doing in the workplace. And I also listen to a podcast more about self-improvement, which can lead to leadership. One is called It Takes a Goal. And the other one is a book, I think we all know, Atomic Habits by James Clear. So those are some of my favorites.
Thank you, Beth. Stephanie and Shannon, we don't want to miss out on what resources you use. Jump in there and piggyback with Beth on some of the things that you use to, manage your growth and make sure that you're staying up to date on trends.
So I'll jump in and just acknowledge that this is a really difficult thing to do, to try to balance all of the things that you're trying to stay current on, right? You're trying to stay current on your industry, you're trying to stay current on leadership, and you're also just trying to have a life and interests that maybe have nothing to do with work. So I just love that Beth noted that she has a true crime love, and I share that, Beth. I also like true crime podcasts. For me, I've really tried to stay connected with my colleagues on some of the things that they love, because you find new things that way. So I tend to ask people a lot. The other thing I've done recently is launched sort of a development program within my division at work. And that has really opened my eyes, because in just trying to create the curriculum, we've come across so much great content, whether it's, Harvard Business Review article studies, or, podcasts from Brene Brown, who I love. So we've had a lot of great content from that. And then, just bringing in people from the industry to talk to, this group of leaders, I've learned so much. And so I think my very favorite thing is just talking to other leaders within the industry, because what you hear is just so much more practical than sort of an academic exercise. But I will confess, Beth, that Atomic Habits is currently has been my favorite book for the last 2 or 3 years, I think.
Did you know there's a journal that goes along with it?
No, I didn't.
There's a hardcover journal. It's in my bag. Everyone that loves the book, there is a journal. I love the paper ones. There's a app version too, but you can customize this your own way.
Yeah, I think that book really changed the way I thought about a lot of things. So if anybody wants a life-changing book, I recommend it.
Awesome. So some of the things that outside of the items that Beth and Shannon have mentioned, of course, I leverage LinkedIn for a lot of things. I like the short little articles and the short reads that LinkedIn offers. But something that I really appreciate that's a little bit different is I do like attending industry conferences, as well as some of the advisory boards that I get to sit on, with other financial institutions. And I enjoy most networking with the leaders at those, whether it's the conference or the different advisory boards, to get to know how other banks are doing, how are they approaching different things in the banking space. So I get a lot of great information from my peer content, I get a lot of great content from my peer network. Sorry.
Thank you, Stephanie, Shannon, and Beth. Let's transition into our last question before we go to Q&A. I'd love to hear from each of you on this question. This is the golden nugget of our discussion today. We'd love to hear, what is your most treasured advice with our audience that you want to share with them around leadership? Stephanie, let's start with you.
Sure, thank you. I think the most treasured advice is to just make connections and to extend yourself. Networking is hard, can be really hard for some people. And it's easier to grow your network while you have a job rather than if you're needing help getting a job. So my greatest advice is just to extend yourself and be available. As I mentioned earlier, I love helping others is what I really enjoy doing the most, and making those connections and connecting people. So if we're not I just feel like we're all here for a reason, and we have the opportunity to connect people in the right ways, and that's something that I take great joy in. Finding that mentor too has been very influential in my life. So finding that person who genuinely cares about you, not only professionally, but also personally, right? So I think of my mentor and some of the things that she's done through me through the course of the year. So I had a baby. She sent me food packed on dry ice, right? I live in Ohio, and she sent me a Chicago deep dish pizza. I mean, what an awesome surprise from my current boss at the time. And our relationship, even though we don't work together in the same firm any longer, we have remained in contact because she genuinely cares about me and my well-being. And she's that person who tells me when I need to pick it up a notch, like maybe you're not leaning in as hard as you should, but she's also there to say, hey, you're doing awesome. And look at that job you just got, or look at, that next project that you guys just landed. So, just networking, growing your network, and finding that mentor that genuinely cares about you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Shannon, Beth, would you like to add to Stephanie's insight?
I'm happy to jump in. I think, the advice that has sort of resonated with me, I think, the most over the years, because it seemed simple at first, and then as I think about it and how it's applied in my career, it's very meaningful. And that is to always view whatever role you're in at the time very expansively, rather than, and Beth mentioned this, do you have just like, here's my little role, and this is all I'm going to do, and this is my job, and I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do it great. But to kind of knock down those barriers of what is your job. Like, if you think about it expansively, you're always contributing to this greater, mission of the company, the organization, and to really, as Stephanie said, lean into that. Like, think about all the different ways you might be able to take your role and make it more expansive, to take on more accountability, more responsibility within that role. I think, as I think about that and how it's worked in my career, that's been a huge factor in why I've, risen through the ranks. I think, as you guys said, it's that I've always viewed that I have this greater responsibility to reach out and say, hey, that's not technically my job, but it's kind of sitting out there and nobody's owning it. And it's really important. And hey, I know how to fix it, or I can take care of that. It's been the willingness to think bigger and about my roles that has really helped me to grow in my career and as a leader, and to stop putting limitations on myself that I think really hindered me early in my career, when I thought, here's my role, and this is what I'm going to do, and that's all I'm supposed to do.
Thank you, Shannon. Beth, what are your thoughts on your most treasured advice around leadership?
I'm glad I had one. I don't remember this question, but my favorite piece of advice is never ask someone to do something that you haven't done yourself. And my mentor told me that a long time ago, when I was back in my mall days, working as a marketing coordinator, then marketing director. So back in those days, we had to do everything, right? So there were days that I'm walking around putting table tents on the food court tables, that I'm putting up decals on these, the big giant barricade walls. If trash needed taken out, I'm in heels and a suit pushing the trash things in a mall at Christmas time, right? I mean, you do it all. Being young for my age, being young for that position, I had to deal with a lot of older men in very high positions, right? So, I had to have the confidence and I had to know what I was able to do. At the same time, being able to get the respect of people that I'm managing. So, it was one of the first things that I learned is never to ask someone to do something that you haven't done yourself. So how am I going to, lead a team of people to do all those things that I ask them to do if they aren't seeing me out there helping and doing them too? So, it's you're never going to get to a point when you're above doing those things. So whether it's the mall world, whether it's the banking world, whatever industry you are, being hands-on and doing the work is always going to do well when leading a team.
Thank you, Beth. I'd love for us to hear any Q&A from our audience. Is there anyone that would like to ask our panelists a question? Please raise your hand and we'll get you unmuted, or you can add it in the chat.
Yes, it'd be great to add it in the chat, or Melanie, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, that'd be wonderful. Let me see, allow mic. All right, go ahead, Melanie. Do you have your mic now? We're just having this tech problem.
Can you all hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yay! Okay. Hi, everyone. So, ladies, thank you so much. It is such an honor to sit with so many incredible, just empowering women. It's so amazing. And Beth, as you know, you're just incredible. So, but my question to you is, if you could only pick one character trait that women in the business world that are leaders or that want to become leaders, that they need to have and instill in their teammates or their teams, what do you think that one character trait would be?
Anyone want to go first?
Well, I'll just tell you the first thing that jumped into my mind, especially after listening to Beth and Stephanie's responses, is probably bravery. I think there are just so many thousands of moments where you just have to take a deep breath and be brave and do the thing that scares you.
So it's funny you say that, Shannon. You say bravery. The first thing that entered my mind was confidence.
Yeah. Mine was confidence as well, right? Think about how you say something. I think the answer is 25 or the answer is 25, right? That makes a difference.
And stop saying the word just, J-U-S-T.
I know, I do that.
Eliminate it from your vocabulary.
Yes.
Don't type it ever again. You don't need that word. It's not just checking in. I'm checking in on you. I need an update.
That is a good one.
I think, Jen, we have a question in the chat. I don't know if you...
Yeah, there's some more questions in the chat here. Thanks, Steph. So Laura Whited is asking, what role does vulnerability play as a young professional that is taking on additional tasks that they have not mastered? So how do you...
I mean, just knowing and being open to the fact that you have skills that you're still learning. I think that is first the most important step, that you realize that and that you're not out there thinking that you know it all and can do it all. So, I think that's step one. That's important, that you know that. I'll stop.
And I also think that, the more things that you can do for your company, the more of a resource and an asset that you are to that company. So you need to be flexible. You need to be agile. You need to be able to pivot. So push that fear aside of failing, because if you do, it's okay. Like, right, you can recover, you can rebound from that. So I would just say, go all in and do your best, and don't even let failure be even a thought. And I'm adding failure to your language there, Lauren, sorry.
And I guess I would just add on to that as a leader, and I think Beth and Stephanie can confirm this. As somebody's new in their career, you do not expect them to know everything and to be able to do everything. And so having somebody try and maybe not get there the first time is never a bad thing. In fact, I think the worst thing is somebody who's not trying, who's not being resourceful, who isn't out there trying to improve their learning and their capabilities. I think that's the red flag. I've never saw someone try and fail and thought, well, that's terrible. It's, we all learn so much from trying and doing things, and maybe you don't know the exact right jargon because it's a new industry, or you don't know the exact right way to do it, but putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I'm trying to get somewhere. Is this the right way? Is this the right thing? Did I do it? And getting that feedback is so important to your learning process.
Providing a recommendation or doing something is always 100% better than just saying, I don't know how to do that.
Yep.
There's another question in the chat. That's going to help you. How do you balance leadership and personal life? Specifically, if you are a mom, I feel like I want to do all the things, but need to really create strong boundaries around my family. I feel like at times it turns into a bit of a disadvantage to do that.
So I'm happy to jump in first. I have one son, he's 14. So I've done the mom thing for a while, and I don't know that you ever get it right. Literally last week, you guys can all have this image of me dashing across a rec center parking lot at like 5:30, trying to make it in time for my son's swim meet race. And I missed it by like 90 seconds. And it was his first relay, and it was kind of a big deal. And I felt terrible. But I was trying, and you always have to keep trying that balance. And for me, one of the important things is to work with people who understand that, because I think it's really hard if you have people who don't value that balance and don't understand how hard it is. So I'm lucky to have people around me who understand and who were cheering for me to make it to that swim meet instead of, kind of looking at me with a sideways glance because I left a little bit early.
Yeah, I can add to that. So I also have one son. He's 10 years old. He's just slightly younger than your son, Shannon. And I kind of look back a few years, and I think that the one thing that the pandemic did do is since we were all home for such an extended period of time, your family dynamic, whatever that is for you. So kids, pets, partners, spouses, everybody's all there. We had this for the first time ever, at least, in banking, because most of the time we all had to go in, let's say downtown or wherever the office is. We had this peek behind the curtain of like our real reality, right? Like, and I kind of think back, the one boss I was referencing, I would, when my son was really young, if he cried or whatever, I'd mute or stiff arming him out of the camera's view. We don't have to do that anymore in 2023, right? Like my kid gets off the bus now and he runs and grabs something off the printer behind me and it's no big deal. So, but it is definitely very hard, to have that work-life balance. But like Shannon, I'm very fortunate to work for a company that really promotes work-life balance. And my current boss has 5 children of his own. So he has like all the patience in the world and encourages me to just push away, shut the lid, and, get down the street to the baseball game or whatever the event of the evening is. So it's just, working for, a company that has that creates that culture of, hey, you can wear both hats and it's going to be okay, right? It's okay to go to that swim meet or wherever or take the dog to training or whatever you have in your life that's important outside of work.
I can answer it a little bit from the flip side. So I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I can work all the time. Yay. And so this is something that I am actually actively working on. And there are days, right? We all have our little smartwatches on. There are days I'm going to bed. I look how many steps I have. I have 422 steps in a day. I mean, and that happens all the time. So I am not getting up and leaving this desk. I mean, last week I was here, 9 o'clock at night. I'm the only one in this building. And I think if you're having problems, talk to your boss, talk to your manager. And that's what I did. And, my boss is wonderful and he is great. And he's, one thing he always tells me, he's like, I am not asking you to do any of this, right? It's me, it's my personality, it's who I am. I always want to make something bigger. I always want to make something better. I could always keep going. So, that is stress that I put on myself that I don't have to. So I am starting to put boundaries on myself, right? So on the weekends, I am not checking my cell phone on the weekends. Because I know if it's important, they will text me. And I'm really trying to have that balance because, think about it. At the end of the day, you're gone. Are they really going to put on the gravestone? She worked really hard and put in a lot of hours. And I just think about how my time could be spent otherwise, right? What am I missing out because I'm sitting at this desk? And that kind of light bulb moment, what am I missing, has helped me transition my workload because the work is always going to be here. I will never miss a deadline, but as long as I can still get it done, I save it till the next day. But it's hard.
I'm going to thank you. I'm going to chime in because we have about 6 minutes left to just kind of help us wrap this up and be respectful of everybody's time. First of all, this has been amazing. There is one other question in the chat, but I'm going to run through the final housekeeping items first and then see if we still have another minute for at least one person to answer it. But thank you all. We learned so much today from everyone, and I took my own notes. I think we learned from, introverted and extroverted leaders. We learned a lot about boundaries and keeping an eye on the diamonds in the rough and taking a chance and giving a chance. We learned about great leadership traits, and we've also learned about leadership traits to stay away from or to help to try to seek to understand those that have bad leadership traits because it might be coming from a place of insecurity. We learned a lot about a lot of leadership resources and how we struggle with balancing all of our priorities while trying to be a great leader and keeping up with the podcast and the advisory boards and so forth. But overall, I think it was so wonderful for the panelists and the moderator. If you didn't see the chat, people were loving, liking, and interacting the whole time with positive reactions. Jennifer Monacchio dropped the 5-question 2-minute evaluation, but she's saying that the link might not be working. That seems to be the theme of today. So we'll get that figured out. But if you have a way to access either of us to share any feedback at any point in time, feel free to send us an email, find us on LinkedIn, because it just helps us make all of these sessions better and better. And then also we have a lineup of monthly events planned this year with the next session on Tuesday, September 26th at 12 o'clock Eastern. So please keep an eye on LinkedIn for updates or emails about the sessions from Jennifer Monacchio. The email address that it comes from is jennifer@thinksweeney.com. So feel free to include that as your safe senders so that way you make sure to get her emails. And maybe we can even drop that in the chat as well. And I think those are the rest of my housekeeping items. And we have maybe 2.5 minutes to spare. So I'm going to go back to the last question. And it is, what is one of your main nuggets as a leader you always share with those who are leading? Would one person have an answer to that by chance?
Good enough is good enough. Know when to stop. It's part of time management. Move on. That's why I'm not going to be here till 9 o'clock.
Good for you, Beth.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for everybody to be mindful that you're lifelong learners, right? My boss says that to us all the time, that he was a college athlete, and his dad always told him that, hey, you're only going to be an athlete for so long, but you're going to be a learner for life. And so he tells us that at least once a week, to be open to learning new things and be a lifelong learner.
I would just add, take care of the people that you're working with, watch out for them, know where they are, what they need, how you can help. It makes a huge difference in the long run.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so very much to our moderators, Shani, Beth, Shannon, and Stephanie, our panelists. Thanks to everybody that joined today. Feel free to spread the word, and we look forward to seeing you all again on September 26th.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.